Hello. Oh, great. Hello, everyone. Lovely to be here. Love to see you. It was nice to hear some chats of people that obviously recognised each other whilst we were waiting to kick off. I love that. I'd encourage it as much as possible. If there's any part of this that you're interested in, that you have a question in, please drop it in the chat and keep like a constant dialogue. That's the way that I like to work and I like to present. So think global, hire local. I'm going to come on to what that means, and by the end of it, what I will hope that you've taken away from this talk is that businesses are global now. There's no escaping that, especially over the past 12 months with the use of Zoom, etc. Everything has become digital, and so the competition for talent has been taken to another level. That's specifically true in the Western world, and I know that where you are right now, there is localization, there are competing things that means that you have to hire local talent, even though there's a global mindset and you want to be a global brand. And so that's the kind of the pain point that I like to hit on today and try to shed some light on with how we work. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about is who are Wiser, then reframing diversity, talking about D&I and what that means from specifically a brand perspective, being part of something larger and why that's important for any candidates, people coming through, how to hire within your cultural context, creating inclusive content, and then where it's worked before and where we've done this. Just to be clear, I'm going to be talking about an employer brand. So an employer brand is, if you're not familiar with the term, it's your shop window. As a company, what is the messaging that you're hit with as a candidate? Really, what is the answer to the question, what's in it for me when I join your company? That should be really obvious, and that for us is an employer brand. Hark it back to Wiser in 2020. We're doing really well. We've been around for sort of 6 years, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But really, at the beginning of last year, we were focusing on topics like how to create a video that brings your people in, or how to create a careers website that does X, Y, and Z. Now the conversation has changed massively. There are two things that are the biggest topics that we've heard, which is inclusion, specifically diversity inclusion, about how to build an inclusive workplace and how to show yourself as being an inclusive employer. And the second one, which is retention, is that over the past 12 months, we think that because everyone has just been working because of Corona and the effects of that, because everyone has just been working, they have now taken a step back from their job and said, do I really enjoy this? Is this really what I want to do? And we're seeing a lot of churn, a lot of people leaving the companies that they were in. And for us, that means that the talent market now is extremely competitive, and so that's what we're focusing on. Going back to this, these are our lovely 4 founders. They effectively went into one of their first jobs, which you can see here. They had the perfect careers in theory. They were consultancies. They worked for Morgan Stanley in the cabinet office, Slaughter and May in law, and they realized very, very quickly that they hated their jobs. And they turned around to their friends, and their friends said, yeah, I hate my jobs too. And so they formed Wiser with the idea to try to change the way that people think about work. You spend 70%, it's a terrifying fact I throw out, you spend 70% of your entire life at work. So if you're doing something that you don't enjoy, it's not just bad for you, it's also bad for business. Things like that final point there, fixing this problem will have a massive impact on people's happiness at work and the performance of companies and society as a whole. That's what we try to do. We try to create a brand that matches the right person into the right role, into the right company. There's a couple more stats there. It turns out 80% of people are unhappy or demotivated at work. It's a horrible stat, a horrible statistic. So now we're 7 years old, 90 people, one mission to change the way that people think about work. As Noor gave in her lovely introduction, I currently assist, consult ASOS, Nike, Trustpilot, Philip Morris International on their employer brand and their talent strategy. And here's some of the creative that we do. The creative part of Wiser is what I love, and I think it's also what our clients love and they buy into. So why bother with employer branding? I think is like the first question, is that I'm going to be talking about a global brand and how you link maybe a global purpose back to the individual and to locals that you're hiring. But why bother with employer branding in general? So this is taken from LinkedIn, and this is the study that was done in this past year. Two big stats there. It reduces turnover by nearly a third, and it reduces cost per hire by 50%. The reason why it does this is because if a candidate is coming to your company to wanting to work there, and they get a really authentic impression of the brand or of the company that they're going to join, they understand exactly what it is that they're signing up for, then they're less likely to leave if they like what they see. It's quite a simple concept, and that's going to come down. We're going to talk a lot about that. And this is on sort of the flip side of that, in terms of, we're bothering with employer branding, but what happens if we didn't? 75% of candidates wouldn't take a job with a company that has a bad reputation, even if they were unemployed. So that's the kind of the world that we're living in now. And I think that stat is specifically relevant to the Middle East and to that demographic and that geography, is that impression, brand recognition, brand awareness, and that immediate, do I know this company and do I like what I see, has a huge effect on whether somebody will sign up, whether somebody will join. Final stat there, final quote, sorry, from EY. The war for the best talent is more important than ever. As I've been saying, the past 12 months have defined the talent landscape, in the sense that it is the most competitive that it has ever been, mainly because someone can work for anybody from anywhere in the world. And now the issue is, well, how do I make sure, if I have to hire local, then how do I make sure that that person is signing up for the right role? This is sort of where the talk properly starts. Hiring local isn't optional anymore for you, because of localization, because of the quotas that you have to hit. It's no longer a nice to have. It's no longer something that within the UK and within America, we see hiring local or hiring within like a specific town or city or geography is a nice to have. It adds a little bit of diversity. It might add cultural diversity or a difference in minds and difference in opinions. For you, it's no longer that kind of luxury. You have to hire local. But businesses are truly global now, as you're competing for people's attention on the global stage, especially from a consumer brand and from a corporate brand, which is what the most marketing that a candidate would probably see if they weren't looking directly at your careers website for jobs, is that is now global. And the danger is that your brand, your employer brand, follows suit. So without localizing your employer brand or making it specific for a certain demographic of talent, what you end up doing is creating a brand that you think is great, or you think that sounds great because you've copied other global players, but then has no resonance with the talent or with the people that you're actually looking to employ, or the people that you need to employ. And so that's the danger. And the first part of that, and the first part that I wanted to talk about is diversity and inclusion, and reframing that. Diversity inclusion is definitely, in my world, the topic of the day, the topic of the year. It's had a massive renaissance thanks to Black Lives Matter that happened over the past 12 months in the US, and now it's the biggest concept in the world of employer branding or the world of talent. And it's also something that talent looks for. And there are 3 points here, is that I couldn't walk in and say what diversity and inclusion means to you, not without a load of research. I wouldn't be accurate. Hitting quotas or thinking about D&I is different from all parts of the globe. For the UK, it might be cultural, it might be race, ethnicity. For other parts of the world, it might be tribal. So D&I is not a term that you can pick up and take somebody else's connotations or somebody else's examples and put back into your company. What I would like you to reframe diversity inclusion in your mind as being is, instead of it a tick box exercise that you need X percentage of people from Saudi Arabia or from local talent joining your company, a better way to think about diversity inclusion is whether a candidate could see themselves thriving at your company and whether they feel comfortable in bringing their whole self to work. That's the way that we think about D&I, and that is the way that a candidate coming to your website or coming to your company will think of it too. Can I be myself here? And are there people like me that I can fit in with? So the first thing that I'd like you to do is take out your phone and head over to your careers site or your company careers site. It's a page that I will spend my life looking at. I spend so much time looking at careers websites, but when you're inside a company, I don't think that you actually go on it that much. You don't really see from a candidate's perspective what is the messaging or what am I going to be hit with. So I'll just give you 10 seconds to get out your phone and go onto your company's careers page. It shouldn't be too tricky. If it is tricky, there's a big flag. There's a big warning flag already. But hopefully it's not that tricky. This is what you should see. If this isn't on your careers page, this is a flag that would happen in the back of my head as an employer branding, that something's wrong. First one is that we're perfect for this kind of person. A theme for all of these points is that a careers website or a window into your culture shouldn't be for everyone. No, not every, it shouldn't be sort of purpose built so that it's like, we are the best employer or we do this very, very well. It should be really specific to a certain kind of person. So we are perfect for this kind of person. And what I'm thinking there is about the messaging that's on your website. How do your values resonate? And that's the second one here. This is our culture, the final one. This is our culture, and these are the values that preserve it. Your values need to be front and center so that people understand what is preserving the place that I'm going into and what are the values that I should be acting accordingly, and do I agree with them? Do they resonate with me? There is opportunity for all here, but we don't want everyone. That doesn't mean that there needs to be a red flag at the top of the careers website or X's over boxes. What that means is that instead of saying that we are an equal opportunity employer, or instead of having a tab on the side which is D&I diversity specific, you can show this kind of stuff through messaging, through your video content, through pictures of your employees and the culture. That's what we're saying, is that anybody could come here and there's an opportunity to create something, but we don't want to have just anyone or just everyone off the street. It's specific for this kind of person. And the final one, here's where we've been and here's where we're going, really simply, which is looking to the past. This is what we've discovered and this is what we've created, and this is the journey that we want to go on, and this is where we're going to need your help. Type in the chat whether you see those 4 things. I'd love to know. Yes, just yes or no from your sound. Yes, you will, Dr. Spasmore, you will be getting a copy of the presentation. Do you see, I'm going to say yes or no. Do you see that on your careers website? Nope, not all. That's why we're here. Spot on, Nora. Not all of them. Okay, for me, 3 of them is pretty great, to be honest. The more, if you manage to have all of these 4 things on your website, then the more defined your employer brand is, and the more specific, I think, for local talent, or specific for the type of talent that you're trying to attract. And that's the line. We don't want to create an employer brand, or you don't want to create an employer brand that opens everyone with arms and says, yeah, join us. You want to create a specific line that attracts the right kind of people and deters the wrong ones. so that the right kind of talent can join your business. So, seeing no, not at all, 3 of them, which is great. The careers website is the thing you can control. It's the window into your culture that you have power over as a company and that you can influence, but it's not the start of a candidate's journey. If I was a candidate and I was coming to join any one of your companies, I probably wouldn't, unless your brand recognition is really, really high, I probably wouldn't start with your careers website. What I'd start with the jobs function on either LinkedIn or either on Google. And so that's so when I did that, head over to a live job ad that's now on your careers website. And there's 4 things to sort of that indicative, authentic window into your culture. It doesn't just start at the careers website, it needs to start at the job ad. There needs to be more information about the kind of person that you want to employ, and spot the difference. I did like a tiny bit of research. It took me 2 minutes. I searched finance jobs in Saudi Arabia, and this is the kind of text that was like prevalent across all of them. What this is a tick boxing exercise. This is a candidate looking at this and saying, yes, I can, seek methods for minimizing financial risks. Yes, I can review financial data, but it's not asking them anything about whether the culture fit for them joining the company is right or inspiring them to join. Your employer brand has to have that level of, this is where we're going. And that needs to be at every touch point of a candidate's journey and experience into the company. This is another one I found. We're currently seeking for passionate and dynamic finance professionals who pride themselves on et cetera. This is what they need to be able to do. It's not inspiring as a candidate. It doesn't self-select. People can't look at this and say, well, yes, that is me. I can bring my whole self to work. Or that isn't me. I wouldn't fit in at this company. All this is can you do X skill, Y skill, and can you do it quickly? And that is not the foundations or fundamentals of an employer brand. So it's probably no surprise that in the past year, nearly 1/3 of new starters across the globe have quit within the first 6 months. Mainly because if that's the messaging or the job ads that you've just seen, if those are the messaging and that's what someone's hitting with and what somebody experiences in their journey into a company, then it's no wonder that they sort of have the skills and they say, yeah, and they accept a job, but really the cultural fit and the environment that they're going into they haven't had any information on it. So they can't judge whether that's right. So when you're talking about reframing D&I and reframing inclusivity, you need to show people about whether they will succeed or what the kind of person that will succeed at your company is. And this is where we pull into the think global message. Every candidate needs to feel a part of something bigger. It's not just the role that they're going into. It's not this that I'm applying to. It's not just the skills that you need. It's about what is the global purpose, or what are we trying to accomplish in the next 6 to 12 months time, and how will I feed into that? This is sort of what we use. If anybody knows Maslow's hierarchy of needs as like a psychological concept, this is the way that we adapt that for creating that culture or creating the sense of belonging. And when we're saying creating culture, what we really mean is equipping you or equipping your talent, marketing, recruitment, people team with the tools in order to show the culture that you have. And when somebody's joining a company, these are the sort of the levels that they go up. The first one is physiological needs. Will I have enough money there to eat, sleep, real basic stuff? And that, if I just really quickly flick back to these, that's what that's showing. This is hitting them with their physiological needs right at the base, saying, this is what we need from you, and this is what you're going to get in return. It's extremely transactional. Next up is their employment, their health, their property. Those are the things like, what are the employee benefits that you might be getting from? And that is where majority of employer brands, without a lot of love and attention, stop. They stop after those first 2 points, which is you're going to be secure, you have a job, you're going to be employed, and these are the perks that we can offer you as a company. That as an individual, as a person, isn't what inspires, isn't what you relate to from like a human connection, and for creating that sense of belonging, the real sense of diversity and inclusion, which is how am I going to be included into that company. The next up is love and belonging from Maslow. That is culture. That is, what are the friendships, what the sense of connection, how am I going to be interacting with these people that I'm going to join on a day-to-day basis. Then it's respect, is that what is the future and the progression like here? Will I have access to senior leadership? How transparent is the company about their finances or about any decisions that are made? That is respect, effectively. And then the top, which is, I know that if I go to that company, I can be, the best version of myself that I possibly can do. If you manage, I'm not going to ask from looking at your careers website whether we get to that top one for everyone, because I feel like it might be a resounding no, but that is really what you're aiming for when you're creating a sense of inclusion for local talent. When you need to hire local talent, it's how will they see that they can be the best version that they possibly can be at the top. And so the sort of summary of point one, or first point, is that hiring the best talent does really start by connecting people to your global purpose, or at least the purpose in a sense that there's something larger than just the role that they're going into. Second thing then is, that's all very nice and well, but how do you flex your messaging? How do you make sure that your messaging or the brand that you put out there as an employer, how is that relevant and specific to the cultural context that you're in? How am I doing on time? I can't see time at all. I've got some minutes to go. I'm going to try and fly through these. There are three things that you need to understand when you're thinking about local talent. Firstly is culture. What is the culture of the place that I'm recruiting in? The second is, what might that person's motivations be for local talent? And insecurities. What are the things that would turn people off from the role that we're going in? This is our wiser strategy. And I'm not showing you this as like a sell or a plug, but really about how in depth this research period and process is. What you need to start with is internal research, moving to external, and then moving to a strategy. The internal research is where you hear from your people, from your champions, your local champions. So you might have hired a couple of people from the area that are now really live and breathe your culture and are performing at their best. That is who you need to start, and you need to interview to say, who are we? What do you think of us? Why do you like working here? Why don't you like working here? What might the barriers for somebody else, the barriers for entry for them to be? And that's the sort of one-on-one interviews there, as well as the focus groups with any kind of key stakeholders. That might be C-suite, it might be local hiring managers with what they're struggling with at the moment. You need to make sure that that stage where you're talking to your people is as comprehensive as possible. The second part is the external stage, where you start to benchmark yourself around competitors. For us, that means for Nike, we did nearly 400 interviews with other digital talent that was in Europe and within the Middle East about what might attract you to Nike, what wouldn't attract you to Nike, etc. So that has to be extremely comprehensive as well. And then once you have those insights, you know what your people think, and you know what the market then thinks of you, that's where you pull them together and start to define your strategy. And for here, we call that an EVP, your employer value proposition. What is the message to your people and to future people about why they should work for you and why they shouldn't as well? And so that's where that strategy then maps out over sort of 6 to 12 months time. And don't settle for buzzwords. If you don't do the research, you can fall into a trap of just choosing the word of the year or word of the day. For example, we work with a German fintech, and they wanted to be called a challenger. Challenger is very popular with people like Monzo, Revolut, etc., because it has that sort of edgy connotation. It feels quite new and quite modern. But when we took that brand and we tested it within the Middle East, the word challenger had very different connotations. It felt like it was disruptive. And it really didn't resonate with local talent. And that's the danger, is if you choose words that you think sound great on the global scale, so looking at your global brand, is that you need to make sure that you've tested that with local people, or with, in your different areas. And another one is that Soviet countries, we found from our research, love the idea of startups and working in a startup, mainly because everything isn't as defined. The process is a bit messy. There isn't a really clear hierarchy of seniority within startups. And that is something that we have found is really popular within Soviet countries. So just talking about the research and how you define how important it is that you are as specific as possible. And the final part, really conscious of time now, is giving your people the mic. So firstly is reframing inclusion, making sure that you view it in a slightly different way. And it's about connecting people to your purpose. The second point being that you need to make sure that you really understand the local demographic and the local talent in the area that you're going into. And the third one is, once you know those things, then give your people the voice and the guidelines or the assets needed to create that content on your behalf. For us, when we come to content, these are 4 steps that you should think about when you're putting it yourself as an employer into the marketplace. The first one, is it humanistic? Will it speak to people on a personal level? Is it actionable? Does it call them to apply? Does it mean, what did you think of this? Or we'd love to hear your thoughts. That means engaging effectively. Is it testable? How does it perform against other pieces of content? For us, actually, as we talked about, or as I mentioned with the Challenger, being a Challenger brand and taking that from Germany into the Middle East, that's what I'm talking about, is the content testable? Can you take it somewhere else? Can you do another campaign alongside of it to make sure that you know how it's performing? And step 4, is it clear? And by is it clear, we mean, is it specific for one person or for a type of person? Take out the phone again. Would love to know again on the chat if anybody has heard of Humans of New York. I'm just going to put, I have. Down there. Yes, great. If you haven't, / if you have, head over to it. It's on Instagram. Give you 2 seconds to just go onto that handle. We love that kind of content. That is people first, people focused kind of content that it was effectively started by a guy who was on Wall Street in the middle of New York, hated his job. There's a thing here. There's a theme here of hating the job. Hated his job, quit banking, and then, it is an excellent table book actually. And went around New York, basically just taking photos of people, really well done photos with a short paragraph, an Instagram caption about their life and story, and it took off. Mainly because people love having that window into other people's lives and celebrating people's diversity, people's differences. So we've been a fan of this page forever, and a company called Colt Telecommunications came to us and said, we have an issue. Is that if you don't know what Colt is, they effectively, if you look up at any cable that's going across the any cable really, chances are that Colt own it. They're one of the largest telecoms providers in the world. And they said, we've got a real problem because our people feel so disconnected. And when we started to do some research, they had this idea again of them being a challenger brand. And we spoke to a couple of people in India, and they said, I find it hard to view us as a challenger or as a disruptor, because to be honest, as soon as I leave from work, my main concern is whether the bus is going to be on time, and I'm, when I'm getting back to where I live. And so there was a mismatch in what people believed Colt to be in terms of what they were actually experiencing. And so we wanted to run a campaign that celebrated all those differences, and that's exactly what we did. And we started something called the Humans of Colt. What Colt realized very quickly is that even though you're looking at 122, 66, etc., and there's not high numbers, but this was their highest performing content that they'd ever had. And all we were doing is very similarly to New Humans of New York, is we were taking one photo, a well done photo with a short caption, and then pushing it out on their social media. And what happened is that Colt started to realize, and Colt said, well, this is our best performing content that we've ever had. And then their people started to engage with it as well. Because once you give somebody that platform and you say, this is X in this country, and this is why they're part of this global network of Colt, then other people within that really start to celebrate and cherish that value. And that level of personal, they want to know me for who I am, and they start to celebrate it all over the world. And then what Colt decided to do finally was, instead of having this just sit on their LinkedIn and on their careers website, it now sits on their corporate site. So I'd encourage you to go over and have a look of Humans of Colt on their corporate brand, just basically on their main site, because they've realized that actually this is fantastic for business, because people can have a window into the type of culture and the type of people succeed there, etc., etc. And that's where my presentation finishes and ends. And there are three things there that I'd really like you to remember. Reframe diversity and inclusion. Think of it as, can a candidate see whether they will be able to bring their whole self to work? That's number one. The second is make sure that you understand your local demographic as much as you possibly can. And that means do a really comprehensive research period and research process. And the third thing is, once you know who you are and you know what's going to resonate with local talent, is give your people the content or the opportunity to show their face, because seeing is believing. If people can see themselves there, then they're much more likely to apply and to not leave. And that's it. I'll stop sharing my screen. I'd love to take any questions that came my way.
So we have a question from Ehsan asking about how to identify the corporate culture in terms of when it comes to attracting the right talent management.
That's a very tricky one. I would hate to say that a corporate culture is the wrong kind of culture. I don't think that's true. I don't think that a startup culture should be glorified, really, in terms of the best way to work. I think that you can take a step back and say that, does your company look too corporate, in the sense that, is it too clean? When you go onto a careers website, is it a lot of white background with black text, and not a real window into the types of people or into the personalities that you have? I'd say look at it from an external perspective, as opposed to whether, is my company corporate, because I think you'd be able to feel that and to know whether that's right or wrong. Another one there, what is the starting point for any organization to ensure diversity and inclusion within their team? The starting point is to make sure that there's a fantastic book actually called I'll find it. It's by Netflix. It's by the founders of Netflix, and it talks about radical candor. Talks about feedback culture, which is extremely honest, and people talk about, so not necessarily in a blunt way, but in the middle of a meeting, someone would sort of say and stop in Netflix, and they'd say, "Sorry, I actually don't think that's correct at all, and this is why," and nobody's feelings will be hurt. For me, that kind of culture, in terms of and asking questions, starting by including all of your members of the team, is where it really starts, because then any kind of promotion that you can do is actually authentic. like self-promotion. You'll get your people talking, and you'll get your people making recommendations and hires for you in a way that you wouldn't have done through before. I think like a feedback culture is the best place to start. In terms of like a quota or a tick boxing exercise, very, very, very difficult. I don't think I'd ever recommend doing that. I'd ever recommend saying, well, I need to have X amount of women and X amount of men and X amount of people from this ethnicity or this race. I think that's a very tricky way to ensure diversity. And if you do find yourself in that position where you have to meet a quota, is make sure that you're hiring on personality, make sure that you're hiring on culture fit every single time. How this topic will help to understand the new generation's needs and behavior. Mohammed, I'm more than happy. We've done a lot of research on Generation Z. We have something that I haven't talked about, is that we have something called the Wiser Academy here at Wiser, which is a network of 250 students across universities, I would say within the UK, but we've now gone over to the US and Ireland as well. And we do a lot of research, extensive research with them about what are their career priorities, what are they looking for within like a graduate scheme or not a graduate scheme, how can businesses cater to that. More than happy to send over that deck of research after this. Can't believe there's only 3 questions. I feel like there must be more.
I think people are feeling a little bit shy with asking their questions. For those of you who prefer asking them over chat, or if you prefer asking them live, feel free to do so.
Oof, what a fantastic, as we said that, what a fantastic question. Do you think that focusing on hiring local talent is conflicting with diversity? Wow, that's a juicy topic. No, I don't think that it's conflicting with diversity. I think that in a global, as part of a global business, or let's say that your business is global, or it's thinking at least like a global business, that overall you want to hire as much local talent so that you have a considerable representation and a diversity of thought within the business. I don't think that if you're focusing in a specific area, hiring that local talent is conflicting with diversity or conflicting with those quotas at all. It just depends what you're saying by local. Does that mean people that were born and bred and raised within this area? Does that mean that people that are living there now, how many years of experience do they have in a certain area? I think that if you define local, then that will help. But no, I don't think it conflicts with diversity at all. What do you advise the audience to do or think differently, change to business as usual? I'd honestly say giving your people that space. So instead of to change like business as usual, or change the way that the corporate employer brands are normally done, as it's normally done by marketing teams or people teams or HR teams or recruitment even. And they are the new, they are the people that have this range and have this power on a huge part of your brand, on your employer brand. The best thing that you can do to flip that and to be different is to make sure that you equip your people with, it might be literally as simple as a phone for them to get on TikTok and make something that is relevant to the next round of hires that you need to make, or the next talent demographic that you're looking to pull in. I'd say that, yeah, making sure that your people are equipped to create that content for you is probably the most powerful asset you have to carve a difference in the past. I mean, if you think about, I'd encourage you post this talk to go onto one of what you would imagine would be a fantastic employer, just as a company, whether that might be, I mean, Amazon would not come to mind, to be honest, but somebody else, any company, and you go onto it and just have a look at their LinkedIn or have a look at the way that they talk about themselves and just see whether it's their people that are doing it or whether it's someone faceless behind the mask. How one strikes a balance between corporate culture and self-ability to adapt. I might need a little more clarification, Hatim, on what you mean by the self-ability to adapt. I did not get the slide about the Soviet nations. Can you please elaborate? Fair enough. That was a tiny piece of research. Not tiny, but we'd done some research and worked with quite a lot of startups that were within Soviet countries. It's effectively that once you've done that research, you have a greater understanding of what will fly and what will not. For us, we found that startups within that area or that geography are more attractive to people just generally to work for, is what I meant. How new COVID-19 new normals will impact hiring strategy and process. What an awful question. A great question. Sorry, it's a great question, but talking about COVID, I've spent my life talking about it in the past 12 months. COVID will impact hiring strategies in the sense that you will probably have to do everything virtual. And so people no longer have that face-to-face interaction or can actually really feel or experience a company. Is that you have to give them a different window and a different way in to that culture. And that's, you know, the entirety of what I've been talking about today. I think in process-wise is that prepare yourself for high volume applications. I think that when you put a job role live now, is you're going to get more people applying to it than before, because people have an assumption that they could work from it for anywhere. And even if that doesn't state it on the role, is they'll hold it in the back of their head and they think, well, that's an attractive company, or this role sounds great, I'll apply, and then have that conversation later. So I'd say that's probably the most immediate thing, and the fact that you need to give them proper window into who you are as a company. To figure out the company culture, then the best personality profile fit, where would you say is the best place to start? What tools are out there? You don't need tools, to be honest, to figure out your company culture or the best personality fit. You just need to ask your people, and you need to ask a lot of them. You need to start, when we do that kind of research and we do that process, I should have said use Wiser, stupidly, but no, that is not the answer. When we do that kind of process, we talk to the people who are the cleaners, the people who are the receptionists, and then we go all the way up. It sounds quite cliche, but those people really will have a different impression of what you're like as an employer. And really, if you're thinking about personality and fit, then you should have a look at your hiring goals within the next 6 months and to say, what kind of people are we going to need to take our business to this next level that we're wanting to go? And you should find the people that match that similarly in the company, find out their motivations, find out what they enjoy, and that should be the messages that you lead with. And that's how you create the sort of talent profile and personas that you can use and feel malleable for your recruitment team, so they understand exactly the right person to come through the door. How do you evaluate the applications/websites hiring quality compared to the conventional way with respect to diversity and quality? That is a question for my recruitment team. That's an extremely hard one to answer in quite a succinct way, because you have D&I and diversity metrics that I know you have in the Middle East with localization. That versus how to hire just on quality is very, very tricky. To be honest, I would say get some external support and get them to teach you how that works for the first time for 2 months maybe, and they work on your recruitment processes on how that's inclusive, and then take that knowledge, learn it, and run for yourself. That I'm more than happy to connect you with our head of diversity, head of graduate, or head of recruitment, really, that could talk about that process in more detail. With new changes, do you believe it's time for CVs to be changed? Format of content. if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, I think CVs work. they tell you about somebody, and they tell you about what they've been up to and what they've done. I think that, to be honest, LinkedIn is more of a CV. I know that from experience, our recruiters, and this is not a generalization, I think this is a statistic, recruiters spend on average 8 seconds looking at someone's CV. I think that it's more about the window that they get into that person on LinkedIn, other mediums, etc. And to be honest, it should be the other way around, as someone should be able to look at you and say, well, I think I'm going to succeed here, so I'll apply. But no, I don't think they do need to be changed, to be honest. It's more and challenges offered. Furthermore, in reality, people look for sustainability. So yeah, let me read that one more time. Thank you for a very interesting thoughts. I think it's also important to relate them to the anticipated added value and challenges offered. Sustainable growth in their career path. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When I talk about culture and I talk about that window into somebody's into your company culture, and whether somebody can see themselves succeeding there, of course, what I'm talking about as well is like ESGs, whether that's sustainability, security, and the growth that someone can get out of their career path. That will come throughout the application and throughout the candidate process. When you're hiring someone, they should be able to figure all of that out. But what they need to know is right at the beginning is what kind of employer, in terms of what are you offering to that person? How will that person grow with you? What are the structures? What is the format? What is the setup in order for that person to be successful? But you're absolutely right. There is more to employer branding than just, you know, give your people the mic and let them talk about it online. Yeah, there are different facets for sure.
We are coming to a close. We're almost done. 1 minute to spare. So if anyone else has any questions, please ask on the chat now. If not, we can then conclude the session. Oh, you're in luck.
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. A team, in terms of people joining for a corporate, it takes time to change a corporate culture. So looking for someone that can adapt and sort of change with the different challenges. That is a case-by-case basis. I think, to be honest, this for me is about EVP. So that's a term I mentioned earlier about employer value proposition. Once we have done the research, the extensive research process of internal, external, and then start to define that strategy, a really important part that we build into that is educating leaders or educating hiring managers. So once you understand this is the succinct way that we can describe our purpose or who we are as a company and where we're going, that is the kind of thing that you then need to educate your hiring managers, mid-level, senior level managers on, so that they can understand exactly who's right for the role and whether they can be malleable and whether they can change based on where you're going. I think the more people have access to that information, the easier it will be, I suppose, to strike that balance between someone who's a great culture fit and also someone who can adapt and to the challenges / have the job requirements. Something that we haven't talked a lot about, which I know is a big topic, is upskilling too. More than happy if you drop me an email to chat around how we would approach that, or how I think having an EVP or a strong EVP makes that easier in terms of skilling people.
Great. Thank you, Oscar. For those of you who want to stay back and continue asking questions, feel free to do so. We are now going to be closing the event because it is 3 p.m. and we promised everyone that we will be closing at 3. We will be sending the PowerPoint presentation. For those of you who have any additional questions later on, please feel free to let us know, and we make sure to pass it on to Oscar, and he'll provide us with an answer, which we'll share with you once we receive them from him. Thank you everyone for joining, and we hope that you enjoyed today's session. We look forward to seeing you in our future Ask the Expert series events that we have going on next month on mergers and acquisitions, followed by enterprise value creation in July. And we will continue to add more and more topics regularly. So thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to seeing you in upcoming events. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Oscar, for this wonderful presentation. It was very insightful, very informative.
No problem.
I didn't notice myself, which is pretty cool. So thank you so much. And anyone who has questions, feel free to stay behind. Thank you, everyone.